Welcome to Middle Fingers Up, the show where we hold our heads high and our middle fingers higher. I'm your host, Kieran McKay. So welcome to this special 3-part series where we are following a couple's first year together after marriage. And I just want to say, no matter how long you've been together as a couple, that first year of marriage can be incredibly challenging. Been there, those of us that have been married, I think we can understand what that 1 year or first year can entail. The wedding often takes precedence over the whole marriage itself, and the lead up is filled with mixed emotions. I don't know, sometimes you're irritated during the process or sadness. Then there's excitement and all the emotions in between. And then there's all these family members that are there during the wedding process and maybe other loved ones. And sometimes it feels like you're trying to please some of them or prove something to the others. And despite being surrounded by so much family and loved ones, the events leading up to the wedding can feel isolating once it's over. And sometimes you carry some of those mixed bag of emotions into the beginning of this marriage. And for a lot of people in the South Asian community, marriage starts when you live together, and you live together when you get married. So all of that is happening at once. So what does a first year of marriage look like? I think the media will show us how cute and where the honeymoon phase is supposed to be. People tell you what it's supposed to be like. No one really talks about how hard it is. So you see other people and you think, oh, they're doing so much better than us. And so it can vary for each couple. And I think one relatable aspect is the word transition. And I think there's a transition that happens for a bride, the groom, and maybe even their families. For instance, when making big financial decisions, you no longer go to your parents first, and you have to figure out the process with your partner. So it sounds simple, but transitions like these can create a ripple effect if couples don't recognize and then navigate these things together. And so I think it's about learning to turn to each other first. And that's a huge transition. So today we are welcoming back Simrit and Harjot, our newlyweds from episode 60, You Need to Be Comfortable with Being Uncomfortable. We're excited to continue our journey with Simrit and Harjot. And today we're going to focus a little bit more about that transition and see how things are coming along. So this is part 2 of 3. Welcome. How are you guys doing?
Doing well. How are you?
Good. Good.
Doing great.
Did you get a chance to hear what I was saying?
That.
Anything in that stand out to you, or would you agree? What would you add to it?
I think it was spot on, and I think only somebody who's been married can actually speak to it that accurately. Because
for somebody who's been married for so long, you nailed the transit, what it means to be married or newlywed, right?
This ancient dinosaur here. Because dinosaurs also go through transitions. It never ends. It's a growth process, you become a kid, then you're a teenager. And so you're just when I have it figured out, what's this new thing going on here? And, things happen, jobs, living together, moves, maybe family, growing, kids, all this kind of stuff. And so, and then you individually are also who you are now after 7 years or 8 years, 9 years being together. You're so different. I would imagine there's similarities, but there's probably a lot in your relationship and then individuals, right? As growing, I would imagine.
Yeah, the only constant in life is change. So if you're not changed, you're stuck.
Right?
You're not changing, you're stuck. Yeah.
So it's not a bad thing, but sometimes when you're what is going on? It's a lot.
It's growing pains, right? That's what we always say. We're just going through growing pains is all it is.
But, good way to put it.
Yeah, it is. You grow from it, you learn from it, you become stronger from it. And just as you get a grasp on that, there's something else around the corner to, make you grow again.
Right. Yeah. But then, here we are, her marriage, It's the happiest, best thing in the world. They it's like signing up for the army, right? They glorify. They're like, oh, sign up for the army, sign up for marriage. It's the best thing. You get these benefits.
Why'd you laugh awkwardly when she said that?
Because it's just so right.
She's just trying to go along with me. She's like, oh, she's trying to be funny. I'll laugh along, even though this is nothing like my life. My marriage is perfection.
No, that was her agreeing laugh. Those are agreeing well.
But before we move further, I just want to start with an apology. I want to go on the record here. Jyoti, I went back for the second time and listened to your guys' episode just to like prepare for this one. And I feel like I've grown since episode 60 because I owe you an apology because I interrupted you so fucking much. Like you would try to say something and I would get so excited and cut you off and I feel terrible. And the times that I didn't cut you off, which I was so grateful, you said great things. Like we'll get to feedback in a bit, but yeah, like you have a lot of really important things to say. So I'm really sorry that I kept cutting you off and then, going on with that. So this time I will try my best to not do that.
We both kind of steamrolled him.
You really are.
But I can't promise. I'm kidding. See how I did that? I did that.
It's the first time you apologize for loving the sound of your own voice. I've just gotten used to you talking so much that.
Okay, well, welcome. So let's start with episode 60. Like, how you guys listened to it. Was it hard? Was it easy? Were you like proud of yourself? Like, how would you say that episode was for you?
It was good. I mean, other than the fact that it was so all over the place and we couldn't stay on track, I think there was meat in there for sure that I thought was good. And based on the feedback I received, I think a lot of people kind of felt the same.
Yeah.
I agree with a lot of what we said still.
Yeah.
Yeah. I thought it went well.
Yeah.
Our first time podcasting, it was definitely a little rusty.
I think that's what I found is it was scattered.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I think we went into it thinking that we're gonna nail this and this and these points, but then obviously like you want the conversation to be organic and we talked about all the different things. So yeah, but I thought it went really well.
Yeah. I think that's fair. I think it was done really well on both your part. I think that the scattered was excitement and just knowing each other. Like I think that's what was showing up sometimes. Like we would be in a conversation, and so naturally when you know each other, you do that. You take over or you go on the side quest and talk about something else. But I think apart from that, but I also think that's what also made it enjoyable for people. Like I got a lot of feedback that people really thought there was a lot of good content covered that was done in a light way. Because I'm, Miss Debbie Downer over here and serious stuff all the time. And so I no offense taken. All press is good press. But I just thought it didn't take over that part. But I also think there was I'm glad I went back and listened to it again because there was a lot of stuff that you guys covered that, as I said to you, like themed in certain ways that we're going to talk a little bit about today too, that I think show up for a lot of people. And you guys were doing such a good job. Like you were still being consistent in what you were saying. I think you felt scattered, but you were being very consistent with your message. So today let's try something different. We'll try to structure it and see how that goes. But that means I have to be a good host too. So who knows? It's already not going to happen.
Good luck.
Yeah. I believe in you.
Yeah. Well, since we are talking about feedback, like, is there anything in particular that you received? Because I can tell you guys like what we got on our end here.
The only feedback I got was actually I was surprised at which of my friends and family listened to it.
Oh, okay,
right?
That's
like
cool.
Younger cousins and stuff.
Yeah.
And not really because I'm terrible at asking questions. Not really. I didn't get very in-depth feedback. It was just that like, hey, really enjoyed the podcast, and I learned a lot.
Yeah.
And it was mostly like from younger cousins. So yeah, it was cool. I'm cool for them to hear my perspective on stuff that we don't really talk about typically.
Yeah.
I got a lot of feedback on people think that you're pretty great. And I was like, yeah, he's all right. But but I think the biggest feedback that I got was my take on the whole family stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Like my family's my family, your family's your family, which I think is a pretty controversial take that not a lot of people consider, but having heard it, that kind of gave them a whole new perspective of what a relationship should be. Especially, I think a lot of people who are newly married, do they struggle, like especially if they're living with the in-laws? I think they struggle with that a lot. They don't understand that that's still your family and my family's still my family, because it all just bleeds together when you do live together, right? So I think that was a big kind of eye-opener for a lot of people. That was the biggest feedback I got, that I never considered that. That's so true when you put it like that, and so on and so forth.
I think that's something people think, but they never actually say.
Well, especially in our culture, right? It's so taboo. Culture, like I'm the jerk for thinking that like, oh, she doesn't consider us family, or like, she's saying that she's not their family. It's like, no, I still respect. Not saying they're not family, they're not directly your family, doesn't eliminate respect. The respect still has to remain. It's mutual respect on both sides. That doesn't mean you're not kind, you're not loving. It just means that the same kind of, the word I'm looking
there's
for
a relationship here. There. It's just not. It's not the same as
your like you're not gonna.
You grew up with.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
But I think what happens sometimes is, as in-laws, some mean well, and you start your relationship with your son-in-law or your daughter-in-law as if you've always known them, like you have, how long you've known your biological child. And part of what you talked about was like, we're starting at the beginning. It's about getting to know each other and what. So sometimes these expectations are put on, but it's like, we just met, we're just getting to know each other. And so I think you're right, Jyoti, like people don't want, they think it, but they don't talk about it because you're just supposed to love each other in that way. And that's when a lot of the problems happen. And like you said, you can have lots of love and kindness and a great experience with your in-laws. It's just also understanding that your spouse is in charge of what goes on with the politics in the family in
absolutely.
That way. Like, because you have your own politics to cover in your family. So overstepping that is, it's hard to say to your wife or your husband, well, you can go talk to my parent about that thing. Like that's
the thing. If I mess up, my parents are going to understand that, okay, this is like, they're more forgiving. Whereas if he was to mess up in some way, shape or form, they likely wouldn't be as forgiving to him. I mean, I guess my parents are pretty cool with you, but it's still that understanding, the level of understanding isn't there. And when you're actually family, they will get it and they'll be much more forgiving and understanding and empathetic and towards whatever you're doing. So,
well, I think that's also because we accept it different too. Like, we're more willing to sometimes accept that from our own mother or our own sister. And even if our mother-in-law or sister-in-law or brother-in-law, whoever else is trying to give that to us, sometimes it's like, whoa, like, like you don't know me. And again, it's true, but also then things get all weird because it's like, that's too much for me. Or I can have an actual honest conversation with my own biological parent and actually learn something from this and feel like I have to feel bad. And it's just all these dynamics and stuff. But when you're in charge of your own family, sometimes I think that can make it a little bit more approachable when you're going to each other's houses and there's a fight happening. You're like, this is your family, not it. Good luck driving uncle home today.
Just gonna go scroll endlessly through my phone here.
Thank God. Any other feedback? I think that just want to say, like, that feedback that you got, that's so big. And I think sometimes we overlook things because we think it's supposed to be this way and whatnot. And I think what you did was open the door for a lot of people to be able to say, I don't have to feel bad about the fact that I feel or think this way. And if I actually go there and take care of it, maybe there's a better outcome in how this relationship can go or whatnot. Like, I think there's like lots of cool things that can come out of, if you want to call yourself the bad guy or whatever, that's fine. But I think, like you said last time, you're the trail blazer in your family who has a little bit of a different thought process. So I think that's always good to have that kind of outlook as well, because it's like, why are we suffering if this isn't serving us?
Yeah, we have to really like take a look at, okay, we're raised this way, but just because we're raised that way doesn't mean we need to stay that way.
Yeah.
We need to look at like what we're raised with. Does that actually benefit us in the present with the current world that we live in, the current society that we live in? And honestly, a lot of what we were raised with doesn't. It doesn't benefit us in this day and age. Like, the world is such a different place than what it was when our parents were bringing us up. And so, it's our job to unlearn all of that and think about, okay, what do I actually value in this day and age? And how can I retrain myself to think about things differently, that it's going to benefit me now and in the future? Because so many people, they stick to these old beliefs, and like, you can just see it. It's like, if you just let this go, you would just be so much happier. But people really struggle with doing that because that's just what they know and that's just what they've been taught.
I think also we're just more protective of our own energy.
Yeah, as we should
versus how our parents were, right? Where like it was okay to get stepped on and stuff and whatnot, or be disrespected, and you just like, oh, coiny, right? We don't.
Yeah.
No.
As you should.
I'm going to read something to you because I thought this was like really amazing. Somebody sent this to me. And so it's feedback, but they had also heard this come up in Carrie and I did an episode with Amin and Brenda not too long ago after both of yours. And we talked about your episode. And for Amin in there, who's come on the show a few times, he really appreciated that you made the effort that you did to speak Punjabi for your speech. Like that really stood out to him because he doesn't know how to speak Punjabi. And that's something that he's working out at this day and age now. Like, should I go learn it? I can't, whatever, all these things. And so he thought that was really bold that you did that. And so somebody was listening at that time to that episode and they just had gone through, they just lost their grandma. So can I just read it to you? Because I just think it's so cute what she wrote.
Sure.
So she's like, I'm listening to episode 72 and I love the talking in Punjabi so everyone can be included and understand the speech. I was so nervous about making a speech at my grandma's funeral and was getting super triggered and defensive when my mom and mama kept asking me to speak in Punjabi. It put that into perspective for me. A lot of people were older and that they didn't get to fully understand my speech because I chose to do it in English, which I feel like now is a disservice to the people who came out to honor my grandma and hear her stories. So I just love that perspective. Just shifted something for me. Like that's so big. Like that's so like good for you, man. Like that's cool that you did that. People are picking up on these things, we're finding our roots. We're going back and I just thought that was huge. And then lots of other stuff about your tips. Every time you would throw in tips for the guys, people were like, those were really good.
Like I was re-listening. I was like, oh my God, it's who are we to be giving this advice?
I loved it. So throw in more tips. Good work, guys. I thought that was really awesome. And
I hope that person that wrote in, they shouldn't feel bad about doing it in English either, though, because it still meant something to them, right? I mean, yeah, of course, you want the greater audience to understand and engage and stuff, but I think that situation is a little bit different because she's talking about her grandmother, and I think in that case, you're talking more to your grandmother or whoever's deceased, right? So if you're out there and you listen, don't feel bad about it.
She does listen. She's so sweet. She always sends feedback. So awesome. She will hear this. And I think that's great that you sent her that message. Carrie and I had this question. We were curious. We wanted to know, what are the top 2 questions you have to face from families now that you're married? We're like, we figure we know one of them. So like, what are people now hassling you? Because, first it's like, when are you going to get married? And, the other stuff. And now what are they saying now that you crossed that off?
Nobody's really asked me about kids.
No?
No, like I know that's the number one question people think that,
is that what you thought it would be?
Yeah, that's what we assumed because they always, we got asked at the reception. So we just assumed people are, but maybe that means we're learning to not bring that up. That's interesting.
I think so. Honestly,
that's good feedback.
Because nobody in my family's really.
I've only had Mossy just said it to me the other day. She's like, does he need a baby cut? I'm like, no, I'm good. I'm only married 8 months. I'm good. But only one person's made a baby comment to me. But other than that, everyone's just like, oh, how's married life? And have a response like, oh, it's good.
Yeah, that's the number one question. How's married life?
Yeah.
And you can't really get into it because like can you imagine somebody else has married life? It's a loaded question.
Yeah, so how do you answer that without it being, because you're right, it is a loaded question.
I just say, I'm like, oh, it's going well. I'm like, it's I think the biggest adjustment is just moving out. Like if I get into it at all, that's all I really say. I'm like, it's 2 major changes in one transaction, which is 1, moving out of the house, and then 2, moving in with somebody completely new. So 2 changes in one transaction. So it's just a bit of an adjustment, but otherwise it's good. Like we love living alone. We love having this place.
My answer is always the same. It's an adjustment.
And then do people just let it go there?
No, honestly, the first thing I say is it's an adjustment, and I say it's a good adjustment.
Oh, okay.
But to circle back, you're saying the questions that you get asked. Yeah, I would say, how's married life? And then I would say it's fair for both of us. The second question, most common question is always like, oh, where's Simrit or where's Jyoti? Because now, anytime you show up by yourself, it's automatically like, wait, but where's your partner?
That's so funny now. You can't, you're like an entity. You can't be by yourself now. Your identity is together.
People don't get it. It's so offensive if we're out there alone. If I'm at my family function by myself, what? He's not here? Where is he? Why is he
What's going on? Are you guys okay?
Relax, people. You only know him because of me.
Yeah, exactly.
But that is interesting because, again, in what we would have seen growing up is parents always went together. It was so rare that they wouldn't.
Yeah.
Right? Couples always showed up together. Mostly, not always, but yeah. So now if you're doing your own thing.
It's too hard in this day and age. We barely have time for ourselves, let alone to go, And
we work such different schedules. Every time I go to my parents' house, it's almost always when you're at work. And they're always just like, my grandma's always so confused about how you're working all the time, but she doesn't realize that it's basically the same time that I always come during working hours. And she's just like, I think she's starting to wonder what's going on. Are they actually okay? She's probably calling India right now. I don't know.
Oh, poor grandma. Maybe you need to pop by or something with some jalebis, Simrit, so that she knows
No, Timbits. She's modern.
Oh, she's modern. Oh, modern gulab jamuns. Oh, look at that. I think sometimes some of these questions that come after part of why we were curious about it, because we were thinking about things, and I thought, okay, so sometimes a few pitfalls sort of happen in this transition, and often these kind of pitfalls sneak up on couples in the first year. And so one of them in particular is expectations, kind of like how's married life, or are you having kids? And that's interesting that people aren't asking much, because we really are trying to respect that it is up to you that's your business and it's not anyone else's. And so that's good to hear that people aren't hassling you on that.
Yeah, I'm proud of our community.
Yeah, I think that's cool, because that's
even
a huge
the older
thing.
generation, yeah.
I mean, It's only been 8 months. Give it another year and people are going to
but if you were to think back, I know when Karen and Carrie got married at that time.
It was literally on our wedding at a reception.
Yeah, I know Big V put it in his speech, and at the reception, I know you guys are getting bombarded, right?
Yeah.
So just to compare to that time to now, nobody's asked.
I think that's good.
That I like to piss people off and be like, what if I don't want any?
But that is what a lot of your generation is considering, right? A lot of younger people in your time are now looking at what's happening in the world, finances, all sorts of reasons. And some it's infertility, all these kinds of things that they're more and more up against. And so we are trying to talk more about it. Things are changing, just like you said right at the beginning, the way our parents were having a union of marriage and family is different now. For
their purpose
many.
Back in the day the marriage was for the purpose of having kids. Whereas now we get married not for the purpose of having kids.
Now we don't have to have sex to get married.
Dual income. That's
just to have dual income and get approved for a mortgage. That's why.
Loving this economy.
In this economy, oh my goodness.
There's a realtor tip for all you guys out there. Get married, you have 2 incomes, you can finally qualify for that house and move out of your mom's basement.
Or here's a female tip: just find somebody who got 2 jobs.
Oh yeah,
you're like the real life Hitch. You remember that movie with Will Smith? He's giving tips to bachelors over here.
Karen, you're giving him way too much credit. You think he's got that kind of game?
I do actually. I think that you should try. Dude. You could be the real life Hitch. Look at your romantic meeting story. Look at the way he pulled off your romantic. Look at this, right?
Dude, I peaked in life. I tell people all the time. Here's one that when people ask, or guys ask rather, I say, you know what? You shut your mouth, go home and kiss your wife and tell her you love her, because you don't stand a chance in today's day and age. Which I'm one of those guys, because you have to online date and stuff now, and I have no game. So if Simrit left me, I always say I'd be single for the rest of my life.
So I was talking about pitfalls. So did you guys ever discuss some potential pitfalls that maybe before getting married, hey, what are some things that we can expect, or what in terms of even expectations? Did you guys, and you don't have to tell us what your decision is. We're not privy to it, but did you talk about things do we want kids? Did you talk about goals and finances and we're going to have a house, those kinds of things before getting married? And again, you don't have to tell us the details, because again, that's your business, but can you share how you guys had those conversations?
With kids stuff, it was just something that I think both of us, when we started out in the relationship, we just had this expectation that, yes, we want kids. We kind of thought we would want kids, but then as time went on and just life got realer and you just get more into adulting, and, that's when you kind of realize oh shoot, is that actually something that we want, or is it just something that we thought we wanted because that's just what you're supposed to do? So we have had that conversation. I mean, even just not too long ago, like we're just.
I'd say it's more recent that we had that conversation of like, wait, do we really want
within
kids?
The past 3 years for sure? Because like I know I started considering it when my brother had his first kid, and I was like, shit, this is a lot of work. And like during tax season, I would come home and I'm like, I hear this kid crying. Imagine if that was my kid. I can't go hide in my room. I would have to cater to that kid and attend to that kid. So that's when I started considering it. I'm like, oh my God, my career and having a kid, they just don't go hand in hand. So that's kind of when I started considering that. I had that conversation with you then.
Yeah, she brought it up.
Yeah, because I'm like, I don't want you, if that's something I'm considering and you're like hell bent on wanting kids, then. So we did have that conversation. We had conversations about our finances.
One thing I don't think we really did was talk about like long-term goals, though.
Yeah, we did. We've talked about that
in specifics. Yeah, but I mean, I guess we didn't have like I guess how they say set smart goals and like timelines of this is what we're gonna do.
No, we did have the conversation. We talked about finances. We talked about what the expectation is, what kind of life we'd like to live, and like you said, it changes along the way, anyways. Because even now, like what I want now is very different than what I wanted, say, 4 years ago. 4 years ago, I was a different person who had different ideas of how I wanted my life to go. And now, just given the change in the world, I'm just like, okay, I don't know if that's sustainable anymore. So we have had those conversations. Like we're pretty open about discussing our finances and stuff. It's not like, I hear a lot of stories about people and having finance issues.
I'm like, I can't. Secret about what each person has.
Yeah. And I can ask him, be like, how much do you have in your bank account right now? And he'll tell me. I can even same thing with me. Like I can just hand him my phone and be like, here, you can take a look at whatever you want. Like it's not a secret.
Mm-hmm.
On a side note there, just for everybody out there, or people who are engaged or getting married or thinking about getting married, is that's something to keep in mind, because that's something that I struggled with for a little bit, was just remember that, what your partner wants or what's once wanted is going to change, right? And you can't be mad at them for that, because there's certain things that I think I struggled with as well, right? Of like, well, no, you said you wanted this and now it's like this.
You're managing now what were expectations and what is reality. So, tell that is something that I think a lot of people I want to highlight in the first year. It's like a deal breaker. It's like, whoa, this isn't what we talked about. And it's not possible to talk about everything because you don't even know half of it. So how are you guys managing that? Managing like maybe some expectations, maybe back in the day you were clear, you knew your decision about kids, or you knew some things and now you're living in it and you're like, oh, maybe it's not this way. So how are you dealing with the feelings and all of that? That's like, oh, this isn't necessarily what we thought we were going to do.
Transparency and open communication. Like, I think I'm probably the one who's got more of the change now, or like things or my goals in life are changing a little bit now. So, and I think that was probably a bit of a shock for you. And it's, I think that's what you're referring to. So mine was just like, I know that I wanted this at one point, and here's my reasoning for why it's changed. Here's what's going on here. Here's my thought process. Here's kind of where I stand right now. Here's the support I need. And this is kind of where I see the trajectory going. I don't know if it's going to stay that way, but at this point in time, that's kind of what I see. So it's not like he's left to guess anything. I mean, I don't know if you still are.
No, you do a great job of making things very clear.
Yeah.
You don't play any games, that's for sure.
Did you see that smile?
Clear as mud.
A little too clear.
But then can I ask you, and obviously tell me if I'm overstepping any of this, but like, how do you manage? Because that's great that your partner is clear. That's one part of it. That's helpful. The other part is now, how do I receive this information? And so for either of you, when one is saying, okay, this is what we talked about, but now this is where I'm headed, how do you switch lanes with them? Like, what do you do?
I can't really speak on that. And that's something I'm still learning.
If you come to me and like, because I know if you've ever come to me telling me how you feel or something, on the rare occasion that you do, I usually have to, even if it's something that like I don't agree with or something, I remind myself that, okay, I'm with this person not because of these reasons that he's telling me have changed. I'm with him because of who he is at the core. I love him for him and his values. And this reason that he's changing was never the foundation of our relationship. Like, life is going to change and we're going to have to adapt. And that's just what relationships are. Like, and I saw this with my own parents too, right? Like, whether it's finances or whether it's changes in businesses and all that stuff, like, you have to stay fluid and you have to stay flexible, and you have to keep yourself grounded by remembering that you're with this person not because of financial purposes. You're not with this person because of their career. You're with this person because, stripped of all of that, this person is who you love, and this is the person that you want to spend your life with, and they're your home, and you don't want to sacrifice your home. Like, you keep your home and you change your home as you go. Mm-hmm. That's just
you update it, you renovate.
Exactly.
But are the bones solid? Is the foundation solid?
Exactly.
And now we're doing minor. Sometimes we're doing major renovations, but the home is a home. And I like that you say that, because sometimes even you can throw beauty in there. Like, beauty fades. So if you're with a partner because you're physically attracted to someone, okay, then like, what else? Because one day you may not physically be attracted. But you guys mentioned these core values and beliefs, and sometimes as adults we only start to realize, I don't even know my identity, and like, a lot of us are figuring out our identity at every decade. We're like, who am I? And some of us are like, but my core values have always remained. And some of us are like, holy crap, I can't believe I believe in this. Like, I have to, like, you hear people that were religious, maybe aren't anymore, vice versa, and all that kind of stuff. So how do you guys like work through your core values, and how do you work together? Because I would imagine some are individual and you came from different homes. So how do you bring your own stuff, but also as a partnership, like, build something together that is combined? How does that happen?
I think it's about strong, transparent communication. Like, if you are thinking something or if you believe something, communicate it openly, unapologetically. Don't leave your partner guessing what you're feeling. Once you do that, even if he's telling me something that he believes and that's not a belief that I share, it's still important to be empathetic and receptive. Like, a huge part of being in a relationship is put yourself in that person's shoes. Think about where they're coming from. Why are they thinking that way? What has led them to believe this? And really get an understanding of that. So that empathy is and the compassion is really important. And only then can you don't have to accept their belief, but at least you understand it then to the best of your abilities, and communicate both sides. And communication isn't just, hey, me talking. It's also receiving and comprehending it too. So I think that's one way we kind of work through our differing beliefs, that like, I believe in a lot of things that you're just,
I don't agree with.
I'm like an evil witch in a lot of people's lives. But
I think you also gotta know when to not stick to your guns. There's a time when you feel you're right, and if you feel a certain way, but be open. That's one thing I've learned for sure. It's like, be open to her opinion, another point of view, and don't just be closed off to it because you're being egotistical. And it's like, no, I want to be right about this, right?
Like, an example of that is like, for example, how women tend to change, like, they change their last name once they get married. That is not something I did, because I have a core belief that why should I have to change my identity? And people who do it, I don't care. Like, this is purely my preference. This is what I want for myself. If somebody else wants to change their last name, whether it's a man or a woman, you do whatever makes you happy. But my core belief was, no, I am absolutely not changing my name. Never am I going to change my name, because that's my identity. That's who I was born as. That's who I've developed as. Why should I suddenly, just because I'm getting married now, this contractual agreement that we have, that, now I suddenly have to change my identity? And it's only the woman who does that. So that was my core belief. And that was a lot of discussion that we had a while back. It's been
I didn't always agree with that.
He didn't. It was always like, well, no, the last name makes a sense of family, blah blah blah. But through our conversations, I'm like, no, family is the relationship that you have, not a name. Like, your name does not equal family. There's people who have the same last name who have the most dysfunctional, unhealthy families. Well, right. So just little things like that, like having, we had a lot of conversation around that. I explained my side of things. I understand his point of view, but this is another one of those things that just because you're raised with that doesn't make your belief right in this day and age.
And that's the realization I came to, after hearing her side, I was like, yeah, I don't really have a good reason besides that's just the way it is.
Yeah.
To be honest. And I'm like, yeah,
you're right.
Absolutely correct about this. Right. And I'm like, yeah, well, what I was thinking was not it.
Yeah.
And, in the last episode, you talked a lot about ego. And you even, that was one of your tips, even Jyoti. And then Simrit, you even said at one point, like when we have this level of self-awareness and we can check our ego in like, why am I getting so defensive? Often it's just this fight because you're right. That's all we've known. It's something that we're familiar with. But when we like take those defense mechanisms down, you look at it and you're like, why am I arguing this? Like she has every right to believe this. Mm-hmm. And it's going to impact her the most because it is her changing the name. So I think sometimes we are blinded by the reality of what is the actual situation versus what we've been taught or what the culture and the customs believe. And you guys both mentioned this at the beginning. Some things are meant to evolve as we evolve, right? And so this is one of those things. Legally, I never changed my name. I'm always a Rendawa. And I went by McKay, and, like a big part of that is what I talk about, which is that white girl complex thing of I knew if I was McKay, then people could tell that I'm with someone that's white, or like it was a part of my shield, my cover. Like, so a lot of it is funny of why I went that route. And it's a lot of what you're saying. It's to like wear someone else's identity essentially. And it's not for everyone, but that is why I chose to use it, but I never legally changed it. It's like
I think what really cemented it for me was like, I asked myself, like, would you do it? And my answer is no.
Yeah,
so,
but right.
Guys would never. Like,
how could I expect that of her?
The system is built to, I mean, this is me going on my whole patriarchy rant here, but like the system's built to benefit men, like never the woman. What last name gets stamped on the kid's last name, even though the woman does all the work, right? Like it's built to benefit men, and it was introduced at a time where, the healthcare system wasn't what it is now. A lot of women would be dying during childbirth. So this is why the woman would have to take on the husband's last name. This is why the child would get the husband's last name. It's so that a child wouldn't end up an orphan. Whereas in this day and age, it's not a concern that exists.
Well, it is. It's just not as big of a concern.
Well, no, we're advanced. Okay, anyways.
But right. So in a lot of ways, we're talking about expectations, and we're talking about expectations change along the way. And we're talking about how you guys are managing them as it's coming up. And you guys talking about, we really got to be clear. You have to talk about what your feelings are, like be super honest and transparent. So my question is, how do you expect your relationship is going to continue to change as you're learning this? Like, what are you expecting moving forward about your understanding of marriage now that you're, 6 months, 8 months in, and you're like, oh, we're not even like 10 years in, and we're already realizing things change when you are married. And so what are you learning from that as individuals and as a couple?
I'm learning that I still have a lot of work to do.
Yeah. Good for you.
Especially on the communication. And like, I know we're talking like we're super clear. One thing I can make clear is it's a one-way street. Like Simrit does a great job of communicating her feelings and thoughts and whatnot, but I still keep a lot of stuff bottled up inside. Right. And that's something that it's a daily like a self-conversation and struggle. I was like trying to remind myself to even tell her like the littlest things that I feel, because those add up to big things, right? And it's also, she's said it before, now I tell myself, trying to remind myself, is that it's not fair to her to not know what's going on with me, right? As much as I might believe like, oh, it's not a big deal or whatever, everything is actually a big deal, right? Because these little things turn into big deals that we don't share, and we stew on them, especially as guys. So yeah, that's something I'm very actively working on, is my communication. And I got a lot of work to do, for sure.
Good for you to A, say something, and B, to do something about it. And it's life, it's for life, because we're always growing, we're always changing. So it may not always be fixed, but I love that you are recognizing that now you're in this relationship, like our actions are going to impact our partners and vice versa. And so we do have to think about them But sometimes we lose ourselves when we're always thinking, for pleasers about, what do they want or what. So we do have to have our opinion. And I like what Simrit said about you can be unapologetic about your beliefs and all that. But when we're not talking about the little day-to-day things, how are you noticing it connecting to the big stuff? Because a lot of people I would agree that it's just small stuff, but you're saying these things are big. So how would you?
They become big because you're ignoring your own feelings, right? Because a lot of times if I'm feeling something, whether it's small or big, and I don't want to tell her because it might upset her, or sometimes it might start up a conversation that I don't want to have, right? Because she likes to go in depth. You're going to carry that with you. And one way or another, it's going to show up in the relationship, whether that's you being more cold or quiet or more reserved. It's going to show up in those ways, right? And then it's going to put questions in your partner's head of like, oh, what's going on, right? And then they're expending energy now, trying to figure out, what's going on? What am I doing something?
For me, I can speak for myself. Like I've always been comfortable with conflict. Like I don't run from it. I'm not shy of it. Like
I do.
Yeah, but I'm a confrontational person too. Like if I ever have a riff with somebody, I know how to just go about just addressing it head on. Like I'm not combative, but I know how to actually discuss things. So with that, I'm not afraid of conflict, and I'm really comfortable with the idea that in life, doesn't matter what relationship you have. It can be with your parents, your siblings, your friends, your partner, the relationship with your career. Like change is constant. You're going to change, and you have to be comfortable with that change. You have to be comfortable with the conflict that comes about. And so for me, I think that keeps me really grounded whenever there's stuff going on between us. Like I always know in the back of my head, even if I feel like absolute shit through what we're going through, I know in the back of my head, it's solidified that this happens to everybody. Everybody goes through these pains and they work through them. And that's how you grow together. And I told Ashley and Ivy they'd be getting a shout out. I have two of my closest friends. They're both married too. And we talk about this stuff so candidly. We talk about it so openly about what our struggles are in marriage and everything. And for the longest time, like I never talked about any of our struggles, because in your mind, it's like, oh my God, okay, like are we supposed to be doing this? Like, is this how marriage is supposed to be? Like you mentioned earlier on in the episode, like how marriage, the first year of marriage is portrayed as like, oh, this honeymoon phase, it's all sunshine and rainbows, we're like dancing in the kitchen and blah, 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 which, like
we do.
Okay, we do, but like
I do actually.
As I stare at you. But no, like it's when you're actually like, you don't have those conversations and you start to feel really alone. And that's when you start thinking like, shit, is this what should be going on? Did we make a mistake? Is this normal? And then only until I started having these conversations with my friends who are also married, and they started telling me exactly what they're thinking, that's when I'm like, damn, okay, so this is just normal. Like this is just expected. This isn't like us being wrong for each other or anything. So that really just solidified my belief of you're gonna have conflict. And this is why they say marriage is hard. And this is just another one of those hard times that you have to work through. Just remember that you're a team. This is your home. And you got to do whatever you can to keep your home protected.
Mm-hmm.
That's like
realistically, to whatever is realistic, right? Because I think there's also a balance in what is healthy and what's unhealthy.
Yeah.
And so if it's unhealthy, where people are mentally ill or there's abuse or addictions, like I think there should be a line for all of us of we shouldn't tolerate this. But yeah, you're right. Like the good is going to come, flowers bloom after the storm, right? And so like you have to have one and the other. It's not one or the other.
Yeah.
If I can just for a second go back, because I did ask a question and then, I think we got a little sidetracked about something and then you answered and then we went back to the question, but I still want to go back to Jyoti. When you were talking, you did say, like sometimes you have so many thoughts in your head that you won't share. And I just want to go back to that for a second, because I was going to ask you, like, you said you're working on this. So I think there's a lot of people out there that would fit what you're doing, which is not talking about it. So what is one thing that's working for you that's helping you share with your wife the things that are going on for you in your head?
Journaling, which I don't do as regularly as I would hope to, but I'm starting to get better about it. Even just doing like little micro journaling. Now I have a small one that I just kind of carry in my pocket to jot down small things. One big one was something that Simrit just touched on, was she's told me in the past many times, but as of recently, it's come up a few times, is that she feels alone because she doesn't know what the heck's going on with me. So it makes her feel she's left alone to her own whatever thoughts and emotions. And that's something that I keep on top of mind, is like, I just remind myself, that is not fair whatsoever. This is a partnership where I say we're a team. How are you a team if your partner is feeling alone? Mm-hmm. Right? And all she's asking for is for you to just talk about what you're thinking. Mm-hmm. So that's something I'm using as of lately to share more often what I am thinking and feeling.
Yeah.
It's not a perfect system, but that's been the most effective for me.
Well, I think
because I really saw in her, like, how much it was affecting her.
Yeah. Yeah. Who has a perfect system anyway? Like, please.
Yeah.
Can they be my guest on the phone? Can they actually just take over and run this thing? And, because we have to start somewhere. And I think the fact that you're thinking about the other person is a great system. It's not a bad thing. So
yeah, just because it's worked for me, like not sharing stuff and, just keeping to myself in the past, it doesn't mean it's going to keep working. And it doesn't mean that it should work for her. It's not fair of me to put that on her.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's also important to recognize, like, where do those traits develop? Like, where did they start from? How did you develop them? And, last time I brought up, I have traits of my mom that aren't great that, I was raised with. So I actively try to change that. But knowing and identifying where it came from can also help me get like an outside kind of perspective of how it impacts the people in that person's life.
Yeah.
Like, I see the way that my mom was, and like, how did it affect other people? Not only me, but other people around, like how did it affect my dad, my brothers, and all that.
Yeah. And that works for you.
And so that's the thing, where it's important to gain that perspective to see, okay, like, you closing off, like, that's something that your mom definitely does too. Mm-hmm. And you've seen it in your household. Like, how does that affect people in your house too? So now that you have your own house and you have your own family now, it's important to kind of remind yourself of that too, and that self-awareness.
That's right.
What I hear you saying is our childhood experiences are going to show up, whether we deal with them or not, when we're in a relationship, whether it's with our boss, whether it's with our partner, whether it's in friendships, they always show up. And good parts of our childhood experiences, but most of the bad stuff will show up.
Yeah.
That's the thing with conflict, especially in a marriage. Like, I think safe to say that we are the most vulnerable when we're with each other. Like, you've never been vulnerable with anybody else like you have been with me, and vice versa. Mm-hmm. Like, I haven't been vulnerable with anybody else like I have been with you. But that vulnerability also brings up a lot of, it's essentially like your inner children are battling each other when you're going through that conflict, right? It's my inner child versus his inner child. And that's when our conflict gets the worst, because we're just being vulnerable with one another. Mm-hmm. Like, we're showing our true selves that we usually keep hidden in the real world. Like, we are adults. We should be hiding that kind of stuff away. So it's beautiful. That's why it's important to see the silver lining in our conflict, because that just means that, hey, we love each other enough to actually like still show who we are, our authentic selves, but also want to actually fight to be better. Like, that's the biggest problem in relationships that are going downhill. Like, they just give up on fighting. So just because we're fighting doesn't mean it's bad. Fighting is also good.
Mm-hmm.
Spicy, man. Spices things up. Okay, we're going to pause for a second and just do something light. And what we're going to do is, if you guys remember in the first episode, I asked you each to use 3 words to describe each other. And I don't know if you remember what they were, but I'd like you, now that it's been, how many months would you say now?
Has it been married or since episode? Since episode, I think 7 months.
Since you've been married.
8 months.
8 months, right?
8 months?
Okay. And the episode was like 6 months ago. So let's see what things have changed. So no description, just really quick, off the top of your head, 3 words to describe your partner.
The first one that comes to mind for me is aware.
Mm.
Secondly, beautiful still.
And
intelligent.
Mm.
As time goes on, I just come to realize just how brilliant she really is.
This chick's got a brain.
Yeah.
It's fried.
For better or for worse,
smart.
sometimes I wish you would just agree with me.
Sometimes you wish it was just beauty, not the brains. Okay, Simrit, your turn. 3 words.
Hardworking.
Mm-hmm.
Handsome.
Mm.
Still, yes.
Proactive.
Oh, wow. Look at these words. That's awesome. Okay, so last time, Simrit.
I know what my 3 were.
Okay, what were your 3?
From last time?
Yeah.
They were eclectic.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
And fascinating.
Yeah, wow. Look at you. Did you listen to the episode again too?
No.
Look at that. And then you changed to aware, beautiful, and intelligent. Interesting. And then Simrit, do you remember what yours were?
You started with intelligent, you changed it to eclectic then.
He did last time. Yeah. It's funny because I have that written here. It's so funny that you remember that. Do you remember what you had for Jyoti last time?
I had handsome. I had, I think, caring and smart.
You had so many words, actually.
The second one was like because I was explaining my reason.
Handsome, caring, smart, never gives up, willing to try, warm.
More
There's
or
so
less
many words to describe your husband. That's not a bad thing. And they're all not kind words. They're not like bad words. So, okay, let's do our MFU. So who wants to go first?
My middle fingers both of them are up to the healthcare system and the state of it right now. And just how frustrating the lack of care feels like everybody is. But I'm especially frustrated because of Simmer's been dealing with something just like it's an ear thing that we can't figure out. And as a husband, you always want to take care of your wife. You want her to be okay. But when there's like something like this where it's out of your hands and it shouldn't even be a problem to begin with because we're supposed to be taken care of, it's fucking frustrating. And it legitimately makes me angry because I see how big of an issue it is. Like to the point where I had a conversation with her last week. I'm like, we're going to the States and we're getting this taken care of. I don't care what it costs anymore. Like we're just going to get this dealt with because this is ridiculous. It's just, and it's incredible. Like the lack of care that people have nowadays is just so sad to see.
You gotta diagnose yourself.
Yeah,
and then go
exactly.
to the doctor and tell the doctor what you diagnosed yourself with for them to give you medication.
Yeah, no, like my mom's, it's sad. She's basically begging her doctor to give a shit about her for checkups and stuff like that and issues she's got going on. I mean, this simply should not be happening.
All the doctors just go to the States. They don't get paid enough here. That's why.
Yeah. So that's my middle fingers up.
Yeah, that's it. Are you both doing that one or?
My middle finger up was to the economy.
Just throw that one in there too. Yeah. That goes hand in hand.
Exactly. Yeah. Like no matter how much you make, you still just feel like it's never enough.
Playing
like
catch
we
up.
both make good money, but it's still like, fuck, how are we going to survive forever?
And then have a kid.
Nothing feels enough. And then even the work that you're doing, this hustle culture of, work hard, and just keep working hard and try to work for this money, but you kill yourself along the way in a world with a broken healthcare system. So yeah, middle finger is up to that.
Yeah.
To economy and hustle culture. Yeah.
I got nothing. And I got nothing back at you. I can't argue that. I mean, that's a reality. It's bad for sure. And honestly,
I think in BC especially.
Yeah, I was just gonna say BC's worse. Like you guys have it bad out there. Yeah.
It bleeds into so many aspects of your life, your health, your relationships, your work, your sanity.
Yeah, it's an interesting time right now to be Newlyweds, actually. I feel like this has a big effect on us as Newlyweds too.
Yeah.
Yeah, because you guys bought a house, you were renovating it, and you were, with work, and now you have mortgage, and I would imagine all these other add-ons to the first year of marriage that you're like part of the transitions. Now you're like, okay, this is different than maybe what your input was before, I would imagine. Is that part of what's contributing?
Yeah, it is. And we had help to buy the house too. And we're still, I would say, struggling. I'm working 2 jobs. So, I mean, there's 3 days of the week that we don't even see each other.
Yeah.
Because I'm still working graveyards on one end, right? So Monday to Wednesday, we don't even see each other.
Mm-hmm.
Which worries me, because what if like we start seeing each other for 7 days a week? Sometimes I wonder, I'm like, did you start hating me? Because right now we get a 3-day, she gets a 3-day break from me.
Don't worry, we're going to talk about space in a second.
Okay. Yeah, we'll talk about it.
Remember before when we'd only see each other once a week, and like the weeks that we would go, like if we go 2 weeks without seeing each other, those are the weeks that we would have the biggest fights. Remember, we had this conversation that we fight more when we don't see each other. When we see each other, we're actually a lot better. We're a lot more like playful and like, you know.
But now we're married.
Now you're married. Here you are. Okay.
You got a MFU?
I was just at the Calgary Stampede today, so middle fingers up to like the cost of taking your family to just a nice old day at the Calgary Stampede. And I'm like, how are people paying for all this? Like Carrie and I were like, what is going on? Like $9 for a drink, $22 for a couple of chicken nuggets, ride passes, like all that. So much.
Did you find it disheartening at any point?
Which part?
While you were there? Like the whole, like, once you saw the cost of it, and I mean, fair to say that, going to the fair for you and Carrie probably isn't an issue taking the kids there financially, right?
Yeah.
But did you think about other people?
Yeah. Well, we were feeling it. So I even said, I'm like, how do families do this? I think about that when we go to the movies. Yeah. Because we can use those Seen It points. And so we'll go and we're like, how, if we were to pay for all this, like, you pay for one thing, either the ticket or the food. And if you're paying for either or, like, it's a lot. So it is disheartening because and also some families, I think also, if you buy the passes ahead of time, right? Like we didn't do all that stuff because we weren't even going to go as a last minute thing. So, but anyways, middle fingers up to the cost. Like it was just very expensive. And, you don't want to be the mom that's like giving your kid the eye when he's throwing the half-eaten ice cream in the garbage. And you're like, fucking eat that whole thing.
Yeah, exactly. Pull it out.
Like, what the hell, right? But, you also want to be like, good for you for knowing how much, sugar intake like, because my mom would be like, sit there and finish that.
Oh,
I don't care if your stomach hurts.
Yeah.
This is all you get. You're not going to get it.
And now go on all the rides after that too, right? Because
oh god, just thinking about that makes me nauseous. Well,
Carrie and I were like, okay, because we got them the ride pass, and we're like, okay, they went on that one twice. That would have been 16 tickets. Okay, we're doing good. Because we're like, it was the value of this ride pass worth it? Or not? We're like, okay, they went on that one 4 times, and that one would have been so much more. Okay, that's good. Like. Because
that's called girl math, Karen. That's what the youngins call it now. They call it girl math.
Well, we were both doing girl math together, definitely, for sure.
The reason I asked this is we have a small fair that happens here every year, and her and I went this year because we were living here finally. And I don't think I shared this with her, but I'm not gonna lie. When we were there, at one point, I felt really just sad because looking around all these families and these young kids, I think within 15 minutes of being there, I'd already blown like $80 between food and I was adamant about going on rides, right?
Yeah.
And I went on like 2 rides, and I think it was damn near $40 or whatever it cost me. I thought, holy crap, imagine we had a few kids and we were paying a mortgage at the same time. And like, yeah, I don't know. That's how I am, but I got really sad.
It's a lot for sure.
Yeah, helping to the economy.
Welcome to the economy. Okay, so that's where my middle fingers is going up to. So thanks for asking me. So my question for you guys is, I just want to roll back to these transitions and changes in your first few months of marriage. What would you say is I want you to answer these quick, so don't put too much effort of thinking, but biggest difference between marriage and when you were dating?
The accountability of time.
What do you mean?
So, when we were dating, we weren't living together. So she was living with her parents, I was living with my parents. So whatever, we talk on the phone or there's a big chunk of the day where you're just kind of both doing your thing, right? Whether I'm screwing around in the garage or messing around with this or running and doing errands. Now it's like, every minute of your day, essentially, besides when you're sleeping, is accounted for, right? So it actually took me a little while to get used to her asking questions about what I'm doing, or like, I'm in the garage, right? But like, I don't know what to tell you.
Make it sound like I'm some sort of like, where are you going? What are you doing?
No, but you know what I mean? Like today, you're like, okay, what do you got planned for the day, right? And I was just doing shit around the house, and I even called myself like, all right, I got stuff to do, right? But you're genuinely asking, just like, what am I doing today?
Yeah.
Right.
That's a really good one. The accountability of time, because when you're not living together, you're right. You plan when you're going to see each other essentially, but you are doing all sorts of other things. So now that you have all this time together, you may not realize that you do have to talk about, oh, by the way, I'm going to go run these errands, or, oh yeah, we're going to so-and-so's house together today, right? Like it's now you're connecting with the other person versus just like doing your own thing. So that's a huge transition, I think.
We still kind of do our own thing.
But you're balancing, I guess what I'm trying to say is you're balancing creating quality time and just or all this other useless crap I need to do, or that I think I need to do. Do I really need to do this?
Yeah.
So,
yeah, interesting. What about for you, Simrit? Biggest difference between marriage and dating? Do you know already, Harjot? Is that why you're laughing?
No, I'm just laughing because there's just so much stuff I can think of for her.
Yeah, that's exactly. I'm like, fuck. She said, keep it quick.
Yeah, it was like we could go for another 2 hours. Right now.
Maybe this is the conversation. Boy. Let's just do it. Let's knock them all. Make a list.
I think the biggest transition is, I think two that stand out the most are, one, just your day-to-day habits that, when you're not married, you don't live together, you don't get to see these things often. And I remember we made this joke in the first episode too. You said that you're like, next episode it's going to be like, oh, he doesn't like put his toothpaste thing on, blah, 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 the toothpaste cap. And I used to watch movies and shows and be like, oh my God, I'm never going to be like that. Like, that's no way. Who nags like that? Now I'm like, put the tongs in the wrong drawer one more time and see what happens.
But hey, I always put the cap on the toothpaste.
No, you don't. You're like concealer, your moisturizer lids and stuff are all. Anyways, so that is one.
Told you. Here we go. What'd you do to me, Karen? Damn it.
There's so much little shit like that where I'm just like, my God, if my mother, the mother that raised me saw this, you'd get a backhand. But
just if I can add, I didn't realize how much crap I could possibly do that would annoy my wife. I wonder if and I asked some of my buddies that, and they're like, yeah, dude, you'd be surprised.
Okay, but you're kind of talking about personal space and comfort. So like as you're settling in, how do you negotiate that personal space and those comfort zones? Because you are sharing the bathroom. You are, I don't know if you have a his and her sink thing, but we don't.
That's what I was going to say. I'm like, that's how we share the space. He's got his side. I'm like, deal with it. Figure it out.
A lot of people say that's the marriage savior.
Yeah. Anytime it bleeds into mine, and we've had these conversations where, we've had these conversations where this is how I do it. No, this is how I do it. So I've had to tell him that, listen, like, I was raised in a house. There's a lot of people in the house. There's a lot of chaos in the house. And so this is why I'm so big on order and structure and organization. So now that this is my home, and I get it's our home too, but this is also my home, and I want to make it my home, and I want to live it the way that I always imagined living in my home, where I had control over stuff. And, there weren't like 10 other people in the house who can fuck it up for me kind of thing. Right. So I remember having that chat with him too, that like, I have a system. I would just appreciate if you kind of stick to it, stay organized, and you'll get used to it. Like, it's just a matter of adapting to it, and you'll be better for it. You won't lose things. You'll remember where you put things. God.
Good for you. But also know that if your idea works, you need to patent that, have a book, have everything, because women will fucking follow you.
It's
just like, seriously, please, because it's hard. It's hard, but because it'd be the same thing of him saying, well, let loose a little bit. Like, we I do it this way, we do it this way, and so it's like, where do you find that middle ground? And sometimes you just avoid it, and then sometimes you really get into it, and yeah, so. That those things are hard.
sometimes you have to accept the fact that you just can't win. Like, there's a lot of shit that's currently lost right now that she doesn't know about because I just stopped mentioning it. And I'm like, dude, shut up. Because today I was gonna be like, hey, have you seen? And I just walked away.
It's like, stop nagging me, stop being my mother. It's like, okay, then stop acting like my child. Like, this is what little children do. That's like, Mom, where'd I put this? Mom, where does this go? Like,
it is.
Wife. Treat me like a wife.
Another tip for you guys, You lose shit, just shut up and find it or go replace it.
Go back. You know, when we were organizing that room, we had like 17 of random things because I was like, oh, look at the story for this right here. You went and bought so many of these things here. And we were laughing because it's like you can tell when you know, where you're like, why do we have 30,000 tongs or whatever? Because we keep misplacing them. Do you guys feel like you have deal breakers? Do you have things where you're like, this is negotiable, but this isn't?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things that I have that are preference for sure. And then he'll call me out on it and be like, does it really matter? Like, the end product's still the same. And I'm like, all right, fine, I'll back off a little bit.
Placement of stuff, you're pretty adamant about.
No, that I am 100%. Like, do not fuck my system up. I have a system, stick to it. Like, but.
All right. Okay. Well, next question. What's one thing you do now as a married couple that you never did while dating?
Oh, sleep in the same house.
Yeah, totally, right? Duh, obvious. So how is that going? How is sleeping in the same house going?
Oh, it's freaking amazing.
It is actually really nice.
Every day that I'm at work or I'm out and about, the highlight of my day, at one point or another, I'm thinking, I can't wait to go home to her. Right? And she doesn't tend to believe me, I think, sometimes, but honestly, it's a daily thing.
Yeah, you get excited.
Like, I just want to go home to my wife. Yeah.
It's nice to actually go home together from places. Before, it used to be like, if we go to an event together, we'd have to go our separate ways.
Yeah, see you later. I'll see you next week.
And now we can actually come home together. So that is a huge one, actually.
Yeah, totally.
I think it's so obvious.
For better or for worse, because sometimes, you know, one person wants to stay longer and the other person wants to go home. I'd put that on the back burner. I'll keep it on the back burner. I think
that's a good one.
Yeah.
Do you guys still get butterflies when you see each other at the end of the day?
I don't know about butterflies, but I get giddy. Because she's.
I don't think I've ever in my life been giddy or butterflies.
She's sleeping. She's sleeping when I get home from work because I work graveyard.
She's like full on, like doesn't even move when you get home. So you know those, maybe it's not butterflies, but the excitement or the joy to see each other, it goes away, right? So like, what are the things that you do to try to keep having those feelings, or you know, keep dating while you're married?
I mean, I still get excited. Like, I know I'm a light sleeper. When he comes home from work, I know as soon as he comes home, and I'm always like waiting. I'm like, he's going to come give me a kiss now. He's going to come give me a kiss now. And like, I look forward to that.
That's one thing I do.
The minute he's like 2 minutes late, I'm like, the fuck? Why didn't you give me a kiss now? So,
you know, I'm like trying to get my sleep apnea machine put together and stuff before I give her a kiss.
I'm like, bitch, the kiss comes first.
Yeah, I'm trying to get you. That's something that I consciously do is, yeah, even if she's sleeping, I always give her a peck on the cheek or whatever on the forehead before I pass out.
Yeah. Or even like before you went camping last week, I was like, damn, I'm actually really sad that he's leaving. So I thought that was a good sign. I reflected on that and I was like, hey, I actually miss him before he's even gone. So
actually,
I mean, being in our house now, like we're trying to set up little things at home here too that we can do, that we're gonna have to like break the bank to like have like a special night.
Yeah.
So even on our patio, we set up like a outdoor movie theater
the other night. It's not perfect. I mean, I feel like I could plan more. I feel like I could do a better job of planning more dates, but because we are still in the process of like the house is still in progress, and I think I do get caught up in like every weekend. Hey, we got to do this. We got to do this, and I think I need.
That's a conversation that we've had to have. Yeah. Because he's very much like, my job is very mentally draining. Like I'm super burnt out from my job. And so my time is so limited. Like when I do have the capacity to actually do stuff, so when I'm off of work, I kind of want to just like unwind. I don't want to be overburdening myself with more stuff. Like I want to just relax. I want to take it easy. Whereas he's very much like it's great. I think like, it's really good that he is like this, but it also kind of works against him at times where he's just go. Okay, got to do this. He's got this never ending checklist. Mm-hmm. And I think with that it's hard to find that balance of, okay, sit down, please, and just relax. But then it's also for me, like, okay, you can't just stay sitting down. You have to like actually get up and do stuff. Mm-hmm. And, finding that balance between getting stuff done versus just slowing down. I think that's kind of something we're working through right now.
We're figuring out.
Yeah. I think just a couple of weeks ago, we just had this conversation about like, we need to make sure you're slowing down and I'm not just only unwinding by rotting the couch kind of thing. So
exactly.
So I think once we find that balance, we'll let you know.
Yeah, that's a good one. Hold on to that. And I think again, like this, you guys are so good at talking about without saying, like the self-awareness and just constantly talking to each other about these things. I think that makes a huge difference because you figure it out as you go. But sometimes, again, going back to when we don't have those conversations or we hold things within, it could have been a bump, but it ends up being this huge ripple effect in the relationship. And I think that's always the key is like, how do we make it the least big deal of an issue? How can we, keep talking about these things? And we're like, sometimes Carrie and I have to pause. Like we're going to pause and we're going to go out. We're going to have a good time because we had these dinner plans with these friends that we can't get out of now. And then we'll get back to it after because sometimes it's hard when you're having these like transition moments together as a couple and you're like, fuck, I kind of hate you right now. Or I feel uneasy about this thing or I'm worried about you or whatnot. And then it's like, it can consume us. And I think sometimes that's why it's like, this is why we shouldn't be married because these are such hard feelings to like just hold on to. Like change isn't going to happen right away, but we want it fixed right away.
Yeah.
As you guys are figuring some of these things, like figure out the system that I have or know what about this system or unwind or do something like as you're figuring out this balance, what is something that you guys are finding is helping you in this process?
Prioritizing connection, I think, for me, at least. To make sure we're actually spending time bonding, connecting.
Quality time.
Because that's the thing. It's really easy. I mean, you hear a lot about married couples who've been married for years and years and years, and they're no longer like a married couple. They're just roommates. So that's one thing that we're kind of slipping into where like you would just kind of do your own thing and I would do my own thing and I'd be so exhausted from work and you wouldn't want to like bug me. You'd want me to kind of unwind. But then it was kind of just like, all right,
I'm trying to learn right now what's the difference between a roommate and a married couple.
Yeah. So that like, right. And in my mind, it's about meaningful connections.
Which you've got to figure it out, I think. Which I'm, whereas for me, I'm like, am I just being a roommate?
Do I have it figured out because it's a team, right? Yeah. If one person has it figured out, that doesn't mean anything if you're not actually implementing it together.
That's true.
So
yeah, I think that's really interesting, that roommate thing. Like that's, you end up like you can end up living around each other versus with each other.
100%. Yeah. That's, because like there's times where after work or, like after making dinner, we have food, you're like in the garage doing stuff. And then I'm just kind of up here. I'm like, okay, he's going to come up now. He'll come up now, blah, blah, blah. And like, I don't know what to help you with out there either. So it's, we've had that conversation now that like we really need to prioritize like no phones, I hate, like he likes to sit and watch movies together. I hate doing that because that's not quality time in my opinion. Like how are you really connecting together?
It's like a pause, right?
So, like pretend like nothing else in the world exists and it's just the two of you and that's it. Spend that kind of time together. Or if you want to watch a movie, let's have a discussion about the movie after then. So, just little things like that. Like I need to feel connected in our relationship. So that's something we're working towards.
That's a really good one to bring up. I'm sorry that you're working through it, but it's good in that I think that's another big one, that being around each other versus like being with each other, especially for couples in our community that move in after marriage. You do plan that and it can kind of romanticize a little bit. Like you have a special dinner planned or you have a getaway planned because you're trying to maximize time together as you're living in separate homes. And when you move in together, it is easy to fall into we're always going to see each other kind of now. And so I'm still going to do my stuff because it's, again, hard to transition from the routines that we were used to when we lived, in our parents' home or wherever before we moved in together. And so the fact that you guys are recognizing those things and figuring it out is I think part of the whole plan with this marriage thing that it's
just the differences in our personalities too. Like we knew we had differing personalities, but now that they're actually having to coexist under one roof, like that's to navigate that and try to make them work well together. I think
is that a surprise to you guys? Because you said you knew you had different personalities, but now that you're like, are you like, oh, this is a bit different now?
I think the extent of his go mentality is, I knew it existed because I knew, like, I always saw it as he's super hardworking, which he is 100%. That still is true. And it benefits me in a lot of ways too around the house. Like if he sees the trash needs to be taken out, he'll take it out. If he sees that some vacuuming is needed, he'll just do that. So it's good. It works for me in a lot of ways too. And and I benefit from it a lot. But I also then get the adverse side of it too, where, okay, can we please just slow down a little bit? And can you please just, like, this to-do list is going to exist for the rest of your life. You just need to stop and not focus on other things and look at what matters to you in life. Like, is cleaning the garage really going to add value to your life? Or is this meaningful relationship going to add value to your life?
Yeah.
So yeah, I think the extent of it, like how deep it really was on a day-to-day basis, I think that was a bit of an adjustment, even though I knew it existed.
I'm good at keeping busy.
Yeah, a little too good.
Well, and I think sometimes, like, it's good to tap into why, because sometimes it's a distraction and we're trying to have noise, and sometimes we're active. Like, like, is it serving us? Is there a reason why I'm doing it? Is it because I like to maximize my time? Like, like, there's all these reasons why we are busy, and realize half the time I'm busy with, like, nothing, but I'm just so busy. But then I'm like, I could not do any of these things today and my day would like not be affected, but I'm so busy. Yeah. Like, what am I doing? So I have to, like, calm down a little bit too about that. Like you said, that hustle mentality of, always have to look like you're doing something.
Yeah. I think you nailed it, of chasing why you're doing it. That's something I've actually worked on with my counselor, is asking her to, like, I have a tendency to do this, or if I'm feeling a certain way. So when am I being distracted and when am I just being me? Yeah. My productive self.
Yeah, right? That's good.
So
I think the time management side of things too.
Yeah.
Okay, I have a couple more things for you guys. One thing I want to know a little bit is the mental health in marriage. So you guys did talk about, like, even leading up to the wedding there, during that time, there was, like, anxiety going on for you guys. And I'm just curious, there's all these, like, feelings we're left with after the wedding, and some of them aren't always great things. That isolation feeling, that anxiety, and these things, and then we bring them into this new home. So how are you guys, last time Harjot praised Simrit a lot for really being ahead with your mental health, and Harjot, you were learning about, like, emotional regulation. That was, like, a new thing for you at the time, and you're seeing a therapist. So, like, you guys actively are working on your well-being, particularly your mental health. And now that you've had some time together as a married couple, how are you guys working on that side by side?
You mentioned that I'm good at mental health. I think I once upon a time was a lot better, but now I'm like, I think I'm just so exhausted by life that I've lost, or I'm losing, or have lost, I don't know what it is, but my ability to put in that effort to take care of my own mental health. Like, I think I focus on him so much because, like, we have this understanding, Simrit gets it. She has this understanding, like, logically, theory, I have that understanding, but I think I struggle a little bit more with putting it into practice now, just because I am so freaking tired. Like, it's like if you ran a marathon and now it's like, suddenly you got to go lift weights at the gym. Like, you're going to be too tired to do that, right? That's kind of how I operate on a day-to-day. So I've become a lot more tired and don't give my mental health the same effort, and my patience is also kind of ran out, not only with him but, like, myself too. So I don't think my mental health is what it once was.
Yeah.
And the mental health or the problems that we faced before marriage, like around planning the wedding and stuff, like, that mental health was annoying because it's like, this doesn't matter. None of this stuff matters. The stuff that we're stressing out about now, a lot of the stresses they're more real. And they actually have an impact on our day-to-day life and our livelihood and our future. So I think I try to talk it out with you as much as I can.
We're also trying to get active as of recently too, as hopefully as a way of bettering both of our mental states.
Yeah.
If we want to talk about what we're doing as a couple, that's probably...
You're doing more as an individual.
Because I've come to realize I have a lot of work to do as an individual to show up as a couple. But to go back to what Simrit was talking about, a lot of my stress as of lately is just her well-being. right? And where she's at, because I always looked at her as the one that always had it figured out and together. And lately she's just been, she's had some struggles.
Well, that's got nothing to do with him too. It's purely
it's just work stress and literally financial stress. Like it's huge, and it's taking over our relationship, and that's something we're battling right now. We're figuring out very actively.
See, and again, that's like it sometimes feels like, whoa, because we're used to being told or we're seeing on the screen what this marriage is supposed to be. And yet what you're talking about is real life stuff. And sometimes when one partner's a little lower than the other, I think the balance sort of shifts, and we like taking care of each other. And sometimes that motivates the other one to say, okay, Kieran, you're down this winter, however many months, Kieran will be like, I got this for a minute. And sometimes we're balanced together, and sometimes one's off for the other. And I think I just, but just because I heard you say my mental health isn't quite where it was. And I think that's also okay, because we go through that. We have moments where we're like, oh, I'm owning this right now. We have moments where we're like, what the fuck? But again, you guys have this wonderful skill where you talk, and we don't have to have all the answers. And I think sometimes we think in order to talk about something, we have to know so much about it. There's reasons why you're off. It's not easy jumping into the first year, and yet it's supposed to be. And so I think also give yourselves a little bit of leeway, and as well that you guys are doing a lot at once, work and family and living out there, trying to survive all that. So of course your mental health may not be well, you know what I mean? So I just think also know that it's cool to hear you guys talk about it, but also know these things are bound to happen at some point, because there's so much change happening.
I think that's the thing with me too. I know I'm going through another transition in life right now, within my career, I think. So that's just something that is it's unfortunately just bleeding into the relationship, but he's well aware that it's not hey, you are the problem here. It's this outside world that's making all this noise that's shaking me up in this relationship. So yeah, but I think our mental health, I think talking about things and just trying to stop and just take time out together and do stuff together, I think is important. Together
and as individuals, it's just knowing what's important to one another as an individual for our mental health. It's I mentioned to you that I went camping last week by myself, and she knows if I gotta go, I gotta go, right? And I love that about her.
It's just plan hikes.
It's never even a question. She's like, yeah, okay,
yeah,
do what you gotta do, right?
Get a million questions after. Alone?
Yeah. What? There was 2 cups in the camping kit. Why did you need 2 of them? There's also 2 plates in there. What's up with that?
Because we just laugh it off.
Yeah, but this should actually happen.
Scandal comes out. There's no episode 3.
This is part 2.
You guys heard it here first. It's episode 3. We know why.
You guys have to at least keep it together until the end of the year, guys.
We got you.
For production value here, okay?
Yeah.
Then let the scandal happen after the episode. That's what they do.
Typical brown couple, right? Keep it together for everybody else.
By then you've got
keep it together for Karen. Yeah, we got to do this for Karen.
It's always something stupid like that, right? Your sister's wedding's coming, so you better just keep it together.
Yeah.
And you're like, great, awesome. We're going to keep it together now. I'm going to ruin my sister's family photos. Awesome, right? Just the shit that people expect. When you put it like that.
Oh, man.
I could keep going, but I think there were the themes of accountability and this whole check your ego and boundaries that came up a lot last time. And so I just want to touch on those 3 things with you guys before we wrap up. You talked a lot about boundaries last time, Jyoti, just in terms of learning about this. You guys talked about even at the beginning of this episode with your in-laws, how do you maintain that relationship for the long haul and having respectful boundaries, and then as a couple. Just curious, a few months in now, have you guys changed your views, or have there been experiences where you learned something about the boundaries or the accountability or checking your ego? And you don't have to talk about all of them, but if something comes up about one of those 3 even, maybe you guys can shed light on that.
Yeah, the boundaries one is something, it's definitely a work in progress still, but with those, I'm just learning that, we have talks about whether if we're going to go to something or whatever it may be, or showing up for something and one person doesn't want to go, and just really putting your foot down with whether it's your family or the other family, and just saying, no, this is why this person's not here, or this is why they can't come.
Well, even the why and whatnot, the explanation,
coming to realize,
you don't even need to. Why
you don't need to. It's like, this decision. And if you don't want to accept it or if you don't like it, that's your problem, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. You're really trying to own your own lives versus being owned by the community and how it's been set up all these years of how it's supposed to be.
The ego one's tough, man. I know, I mentioned on the other one, kill your ego and get out of your way. But you slip up. You do, for sure. But the important thing is I know, maybe I don't always mention to her, but I do sometimes when we have arguments and stuff, I do check myself later. I'll try to reflect and be like, well, what really happened there? Was it just your ego, or did you be actually defending how you felt there and genuinely feel that?
Do you guys apologize?
I apologize a lot.
I do occasionally. Maybe
there's a story in that look.
And I think when it comes to apologies, though, it's important to be apologetic, but to be genuine about it.
Saying sorry and continuing to make the same mistake again and again is not an apology. That's manipulation.
That's more sorry, not sorry.
Yeah, exactly. So if you're apologizing for something, mean it and learn from it.
Yeah,
and that's huge, because that drives me bonkers when people apologize for something and then continue doing it. The boundaries thing I was going to say, I think boundaries are important with families. I practice it still. I always have them strong. I'm a strong boundary setter. I'm very protective of not only my peace, but in my mind, we are our own family now. We're our own unit. And growing up, I mean, I'm sure every South Asian household more or less has the same story when, there's uncle problems, aunt problems, whatever it may be, and it bleeds into your household. So, or grandparent problems. I saw that growing up, and I saw how it affected my mom and dad and their relationship. So I'm adamant about not letting that happen in my relationship. And my brothers are the same way too. They share the same mindset that this is my family. We're going to live it for ourselves. We're not going to let anybody else change that or shake that for us. So same thing with me. If this is my household, I'm going to protect my household at all costs. I'm not going to let anybody speak ill of him. I'm not going to let anybody speak ill of me. I'll probably be more accepting of somebody talking shit about me than I would of somebody talking shit about him. I'm comfortable enough with myself that if you tell me that, oh, you're stupid, I'll be like, yeah, funny, and move on. If somebody says something about him, I'm throwing hands. But,
wow,
so even
fight, you got a fighter over here.
My hero.
You're a protector.
My fight or flight is definitely fight. But that's what, even with my dad, if my dad and him are, they talk more than me and my dad talk. And I see my dad 3 days a week. I'm staying in Vancouver 3 days a week, and they talk more.
I'm literally driving his truck right now.
Yeah, he literally just swapped trucks with him right now. So, but even still, they're close. I know my dad's habits. Again, because he's my family. I've been raised with him. I know what his tendencies are. I know how his habits can have a negative impact on you. So before you can even identify it or complain about it, I see it and I nip it in the bud. So, because I'm all about protecting my family, I'm not going to let my family bleed into my relationship.
Yeah.
Right. So I'm very, hard with my boundaries in that sense. Yeah. And I'm a strong believer in boundaries. I don't care who you are, whether you're friends, families, in-laws, whoever you are. I don't care. Boundaries are set. You're not crossing them.
Yeah. That's amazing to hear, because I think there's so many of us out there that struggle with that. There's, I'll set boundaries, but I'll have a lot of guilt about it because it's not what I always saw growing up. So I know it's the healthy, right thing to do, but then I'm like, fuck, I feel so bad because my mom or that aunt or that person may not actually understand. And so they're going to take it, right? So sometimes that's the hard thing. And that's that, again, what will people say mentality that we just can't suck that out of us. And so, but I agree with you that it always comes down to talking it out, just putting it out of your head, whether it's on paper or, with someone else, I think helps the first step of getting clear about what is that really about at the end of the day. What's more
I think
important?
he struggles more with that.
Karen freaking nailed it. I go through that every time I have to set a boundary, man.
But I think this just goes back to what I was.
For her, it's so easy.
Yeah, but this goes back to like, I'm just comfortable with conflict. Like, I'm not afraid of conflict. If you want to have a problem with me, have that problem with me. I don't care.
Yeah.
Like, I'm completely okay with that. I'm so comfortable with myself, even in all my shittiness. I know who I am at my core. You can't tell me otherwise. I don't care who I piss off. I know I'm not a bad person. I don't intentionally do anything for anybody. So if somebody has a grievance with me, they're more than welcome to come talk to me about it. I'm not going to fight them. I'll hear them out. And like, I have zero problem with conflict. And I think that's why I'm so okay with setting boundaries. Like, if my boundaries piss people off, then okay, that sucks for you. I'm happy and at peace.
That's huge, because I also don't feel like I have a hard time with conflict, but the feelings, I think, come up. And I think the challenge for you then in the relationship would be knowing that that comes that way for you. How do you know that that's the way for you? But then, you know, when we're good at one thing and maybe our partner's not, or, you know, vice versa, like, how do we hold space for the fact that this is the thing that I'm good at, but, you know, sometimes you expect Jyoti to get there too, or I don't know, because it's doable for you. How do you maintain that empathy that you talked about before? Understand that that's the way it works with me, but he's not going to be able to maybe do it the same way.
I don't think he's ever going to get to my point, nor do I expect him to.
Yeah.
And I think it's good that he doesn't, because I think having two people who are exactly the same in that sense, it's a slippery slope.
Yeah.
Not a good balance.
Although two of me would be great. I would have no problem with another me. Never. Be so healthy.
Karen, I got to say that. I got to be politically correct, but we all know I'm trying to.
You're like, yeah, I know. Shh.
Keep it on the scale. But no, like, if he was exactly like me, like, that's dangerous. Like, how do you then, what do you have to compare yourself to? Like, what's your,
how do you grow then?
Yeah. Like, what is your
yeah, we're just surrounding ourselves with like-mindedness, and sometimes that's great, but it definitely doesn't make us grow, right? If I only want to know about the same thing, you know, in a political view, I want to talk to the same person over and over. I'm not going to go to the other side because I don't care. And I think that's ignorant. It is. That's the problem. Yeah. Like, we have to shift with that, because that's why you're complaining with the medical system and the economy and all that stuff, because we can't shift with those things. So do you guys want to add anything to any other examples or anything to like how it's going with, you know, anything more with the ego and the self accountability to self as well as the boundaries?
Well, I can think of around that. People
often struggle figuring out the intimacy part of marriage, and especially the first year, and how things were, especially in our community. Again, we're not living together maybe, or even if we are, it's a different kind of a relationship, and something changes for a lot of people when the marriage happens. And so in our community in particular, intimacy is such a funny thing. Like, we were just laughing about the Kama Sutra book, you know, beforehand, but yet we're so oppressed and we don't talk about any of that. Whether it's intimacy is important or not, it's such a big part of a relationship with a couple. And so do you guys feel like that's a topic or what that comes up for you guys? Or is that something that you guys don't go to or don't discuss?
The timing of this.
Yeah.
Oh, interesting.
No, we definitely do.
It's something that's been a big topic, I would say, as of lately.
Yeah, I think, and this goes back to the whole roommates versus married couple thing. So we have been having more of these conversations for sure. I think similar theme with a lot of the conversations that we have, we're just very transparent and open about, you know, what our expectations are, what we want, how to build more connection, even in that aspect too. So
yeah, what are needs, right?
Yeah.
Expectations.
Yeah. So we do definitely, like, we talk about it, and
yeah. I mean, it's been a bigger topic as of lately.
Yeah. I think because and that's just going back to like us being just so busy in our own stuff that.
And, you know, stress has a huge influence on your intimacy.
Yeah.
Massively. Right. And I'd be lying if I said it didn't.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's something to talk about too. Like, hey, you know what? It's nothing against you.
Yeah.
It's just so much shit on my mind, and so much stress, like, that you just can't get there, right?
I went out for drinks with a friend a few weeks back too, and he was asking the same thing because he's not married. He's saying one of his friends, same thing. Like, they're probably just like once a month and that's it. And I was like, it's you just become so busy with life. Like, you're just so exhausted by your life that's easy for that to happen. You go to work, you come home, you eat dinner, you go to bed, right? So it's important to not fall into that boring routine. You have to actively make it a point to be like, nope, that may be my life outside of my relationship, but we have to have a life within our relationship and really prioritize that. Because at the end of the day, what the hell's a job? You're going to change jobs, but you're not going to go changing partners, right? So.
Carrie used to always say your work's not going to be at your funeral. And it was always like a reality check of, I'm, you spend so much time with work. We always give more to our job because we're getting paid.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of pride there. And it's true. Like, who's going to be there at the worst times for us? Not always our job. And yet we give them so much. So it's always something to think about. But the intimacy thing, like, I think, it can be, we can be talking about sex, or we can be talking about just the intimacy and conversation, intimacy and closeness, proximity. Like, there's so many different ways that couples define that. And I think when we are in these transitions, that is the first thing that goes out the window. Because like you said, we're stressed. Maybe we're not seeing eye to eye with each other. So there's all the ways that all the routines of what we have and as a couple with intimacy can get lost. And when that happens, I think we think the least of it, but it impacts us the most because we all need a sense of belonging. And somehow in our relationship, we found ways to have that belonging. And maybe the intimacy is we cook, twice a week in the kitchen and dance or what, let's say, but now we're not doing that anymore. And there's a loss in that. And so it creates these, like, I feel sometimes these bigger gaps. And if we don't tend to it or, say, we'll get back to this, or just like you said, it's a stressful time right now. Or sometimes for partners, we think the intimacy should just still be there. And for a lot of us, it's like the environment, all the stress around us, like that's a turn on or turn off. Right. And so I think sometimes it's hard because some partners can just switch it on and off. And that becomes an issue as well, where it's like, whoa, like, we just had this argument, or I'm not feeling shitty about what happened at work, and you're missing that right now. So I'm curious if you guys, have advice for people out there that maybe don't see as intimacy as an important part of the relationship. Like, what would you say to that? It is a huge
part. It's a massive part of it, because that can lead to, you start to wonder about your self-image, and you start getting hard on yourself too. It's like, is this something I'm doing? It's hard not to internalize that, right?
Because intimacy is often, like, people think intimacy equals love. So if there's no intimacy, then people will translate it to, oh, there's no love. And if there's no love, then it's like, oh, did this person fall out of love with me, or am I out of love with this person? And it's a slippery slope. But like, you can still love the person. Obviously, you still love the person. There's so many people who have ended up divorced, but they still love that person. They're just not in love, I guess, right? But no, intimacy is huge. Like, this is going back to like how he was talking about how I was starting to feel lonely. Like that is exactly why. It's like that connection, that intimacy, not just physically, just even spending time together, having meaningful conversations, like that kind of vulnerability and that intimacy that you feel in that conversation. A lot of that is lost. So this is why feeling alone, like, I have to communicate that with him, and I have to do my part and help bringing that back, because that's how you become roommates. That's how you're just two people paying into a mortgage together, living under the same roof, but there's no real relationship there, right? So if anybody thinks intimacy is not important, you guys need to figure it out. And like, there was a point a few months back, we're thinking about couples counseling, not because, oh my God, are we going to make it? Just to have somebody there to, like, where we could vocalize things in a safe space and just work through things, because we don't have the tools. Like, I'm an accountant, he's a realtor / welder. Like, who the hell are we to know anything about, psychology and how to actually work?
Just need an intermediary, right?
Yeah. And like, so for that reason, we're like, oh, should we just like go or whatever? But we didn't, just because we couldn't find a slot that worked with our schedule. But
it's not on the list. It's not like,
definitely. Like, and even 100%, but it just helps to have that person there to help you work through things. So if you think intimacy is not important, or if you've lost your intimacy and you're struggling to get it back, like, just go see a counselor. Like, it would have been a good idea to actually have couples counseling before we got married, because that they help you think about things. Like, we had a lot of the conversations, but a lot of people aren't having those conversations, the finances, the life goals, the future,
even
how to deal with conflict,
even tolerance. Expectations of tolerance. Like, we even talked about, like, before, like, what is the line, like violence and that kind of level of tolerance, but also just day-to-day stuff of like, you know, I grew up in a home where tolerance was looked at this way. Well, I grew up in a home where it was this way. And so again, it's gonna impact us. And it's not one home is better than the other. It's we're each bringing something in. And what do we do now when I know my way, you know your way, and what's our way? Because as you guys said, you're trying to turn this house into a home, and you look forward to coming home to your wife. And that's the end game. That's the goal of like, if we want to be in this relationship, what are the things we got to do to keep wanting to come home to each other at the end of the day? So anything you guys want to add, or anything you wish I asked that I didn't today, or that we want to, finish or wrap up on as we conclude?
Before getting married, if I asked some newlyweds, how's married life going? And then be like, oh, it's an adjustment. I'm guilty of being one of those people of thinking that, oh shit, they're probably on the rocks. Like they're not, or their relationship's really rocky. Like they're not doing well, or they're not meant for each other or something. Mm-hmm. And I think that thought, or the fear of somebody else thinking that, prohibits a lot of people from talking about how real marriages actually work. And I didn't realize this until talking to two of my closest friends, Ashley and Ivy, like when they were telling me about their experiences. They got married before me, but still both newly married. And until talking to them, I thought I was alone. So I think we need to definitely start talking about the hardships of marriage, especially in the first year, a lot more, because, and don't just jump to the conclusion that, oh no, they're going through a hard time in their first year, they're not going to last. Like that's a load of bullshit, because just because we have hard times, I'm not out here ready to leave you. Mm-hmm. And I think a lot of people have those thoughts when they're going through that hard time, that did we make a mistake? Should we have done this? Mm-hmm. Should we have gone different directions?
I think everybody thinks that.
But that's exactly it. Nobody talks about it enough, but everybody has those thoughts at some point or another. And just knowing the fact that somebody like Karen, I don't know if you guys did too, but if somebody's been married for like 15, 20 years and they once upon a time had those thoughts, it's really reassuring and validating to be like, okay, they still had those thoughts. They still made it. They're still living a good life.
Dude, right? We so still do. Like Jyoti will put Carrie and I on a pedestal all the time. And we're like, whoa, like, please don't. Because I think what's made us get to where we are, and look, like we're in a big transition right now too. I've been talking a lot lately about my own internal racism and the dismantling of that. And I'm also married to a white guy. And so we're in a place where we're relearning and unlearning and all that stuff about, you get together and, you think love is love and all this crap. And that's not real. That's not how the world works. And we can't be blinded by a lot of that stuff. And you have to identify these things. And so now I'm in my 40s, and now identity means something else that I have to figure out. Right. And so I think we're always chasing after that, or wanting to grow, or we naturally are. And I think the key is, if we're keeping each other in the loop, then we have potential to grow together. And also understanding, like, sometimes you're going to be a little more ahead than the other. Cousin asked me one time, like, how did you guys know that, you were the one for each other? And I was like, just imagine the worst experience that ever possible that you dread having, and do you want to do it with this person and still wake up the next day with them, right? Like those fears that we have, can this person be that person that's your accomplice that jumps in those fights with you, those brawls, and is there for you, right? And so, and you're like, okay, this is refreshing.
I think especially with marriage, nobody in our community, like they don't talk about this stuff. Like never. I have such a big family. None of my cousins have ever talked about this. My siblings have never talked about this. Nobody ever told me that, okay, the first year of marriage is going to actually be tough. Like you said, you go in thinking, oh, it's going to be this honeymoon phase. We're going to be all over each other. It's going to be, we're living in this house. It's going to be, the white picket fence kind of life. But it's not. And then when you start going through that hardship, you start going through that change, like logically, I know that, change is going to be some friction. I know this logically, but then you think, okay, this is the one person that you shouldn't be having that with. This is why you decided to marry them. So you start to feel really alienated and start to really question a lot of things. But once you realize a lot of people are going through the same thing, it helps a lot. So I would say talk to people about it, especially if their timeline is kind of similar to yours. Like I'm going through a lot of the same stuff in my life that my friends are too. So I have people who are on the same page as me. Like it's not they're not having to think back years and years and years ago what they were going through at that time. Like it's all still relevant.
Yeah.
And I think that's really important. Or if you don't have friends, like find groups of people or like support groups or something that you can actually work this stuff out with.
And I think like even one thing I would add as a resource is, we talk about going to therapists and I really, really feel seeing a racialized therapist. So someone within our own community, like, I've done therapy for years and I've been in mental health for years, and never did I once think that seeing a South Asian therapist would do what it has for me in such a short time. The kind of validation, understanding that in those unspoken moments, when we talk about Western things like boundaries, it's far less overwhelming to actually make sense of how to make those happen, because we have a lot of politics that come along with that. Not to say other communities don't, but we just know what we know, and we don't know boundaries. And those are scary words. And then we grow up learning those words and we think, oh yeah, okay, I guess I should have this. But I think seeing therapists that gets your culture, gets where you come from, can really help us get further ahead with
100%.
What is marriage?
I can attest to that too. Like back when I was, I think 20 years old, I went to see a counselor then, Caucasian counselor, and it like a lot of discussion about family, and it's like, no, we'll just tell them no. And I'm like, okay, well, you could like, that's not how it works in a brown household, right? So you I feel like you end up wasting so much time just trying to explain the culture to them. And then when I started, I saw two therapists after that, both of which were South Asian, and they just get it. Like I could even speak some, like I could, if I'm talking about like, oh, my mama or my masi and blah, 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 like they would understand even just little things like that, where I'm not going to be like, oh, my aunt or my uncle, like even just the relationship that you have to that person has its own dynamic, which they would understand.
Is it the masi or the chachi? Because that's two different
difference. Exactly.
Different politics. And we all know right? So you're just like, which is, no, I agree with that. And I think there are resources out there for us. And, like, again, we're not compatible, all those things, we all know ourselves, we know it's possible. But when we show up to a marriage thinking that it's supposed to be something and then it doesn't end up being, that's not the be all end all. Like there's a way to figure that out. And I think a lot of our community doesn't understand what being happy is. And I think that's in our marriages and our relationship, that's where that shows up, where we have a false understanding of what being happy is. And when we're going through hardships in a relationship, like that's good growth. That's not a bad thing that we're figuring out these struggles. But we think
okay to not be happy always. Like have happy moments for sure, but don't only expect happiness. We have moments, like say just this week alone, we've had some really great days and we've had a lot of fun. We've had laughs. We've also had some really hard conversations too. So like that is just what life is. You can't expect I'm happy every single day, and you have one fight and it's like, oh no, like this relationship's miserable. There's going to be months where you have more bad days than good, but it's important to remember those good. And when you're going through those bad, keep yourself grounded by recalling those good. Like it's easy for us as humans, we're wired to naturally focus on the negative.
Definitely.
It's a survival thing. Like it's just what we do. So it's important for us now that we are obviously more evolved. We have the ability to actually critically think, to remind ourselves that, okay, yes, negative things happen. Yes, it's easy to focus on them, but we can't just ignore all the good that we've gone through as well. And I think that's the big thing. Like when we'd fight, like I would always tell him, like the good's so good, but then the good or the bad feels so bad. And I used to see that as a bad thing. But now I'm like, no, that's a great thing, because a lot of people, their good isn't even so good, right? I love our good. I think our good's great. And I think it's worth fighting for. And it's necessary conflict for the good.
Necessary conflict. Do you want to add anything to that before I go to a call to action?
No, I don't. You guys know.
Good. We nailed it. Excellent. Okay, well, then I'll start with you. Call to action. So this would be the point where everyone was going to take one thing and only one thing from what you shared today. What would you want that one thing to be?
I think it would be knowing when it's time to listen to your partner and when it's time to help them. And this is something I'm really working on right now as well, is just knowing when it's time to just listen to Simrit, and knowing when it's time to like offer advice or help or try to, fix the situation. Because I think especially as a guy, you always want to be the fixer. You just want your wife to be happy. You don't want to see her upset, and you're always trying to find solutions. And I can see at times she gets frustrated because it's a time for her to just vent and talk. Mm-hmm. And I know we've all seen probably the quote written somewhere or whatever, or like the meme that says, before we start talking, we ask, is this a time for me to listen, or is this a time for me to help? Right. Which I think would actually be a very valuable tool, even though I try to remind myself that I don't always do it.
Yeah.
But trying to keep that on top of mind.
I like that. What about for you, Simrit?
Mine is understand there's differences of how people are raised. Figure out what traits you admire or work well for your relationships and what don't. Get rid of the ones that don't work and stick with the ones that do work, and create your own new set of traits for your own house, your own new family. Unlearn the stuff that you were raised with, or get raised with new stuff. Yeah.
Were
you thinking of adding something to that, Harjot? Face looked like you did.
I don't know if it really ties in, but there's something that it's probably going to sound silly and she doesn't even know about this, but sometimes after we have an argument or things feel bad, there is this quote that I read some time ago, and it goes something like, he who wants the rose must learn to accept the thorns. Right. And it's funny because that actually plays in my head after we have fights or arguments, or when you have those moments of like, what the fuck? Like, are we going to be okay? And like, you're really pissed off. And I think about it because, yeah, she really is my rose. And some of those, and she has thorns. Mm-hmm. Right. And everybody does. Mm-hmm. Right. So yeah, that's for some reason that came to mind.
You poor thing. We laugh about how he's the golden retriever husband, and I'm this like Rottweiler husband. Not even the black cat. The Rottweiler wife.
So you're the Rottweiler husband. I like that. All right. Well, you guys, part 2 was great. Thank you so much for your time. I really think there was a lot of interesting things you guys said about this transition time. Hoping you took something from this too. And I'm looking forward to part 3. Fingers crossed. Just kidding.
Goes camping with 2 bulls again.
my gun knee broke, man, from your wedding. My gun knee came off. So shit. Right? Aren't they supposed to like stay forever on?
I ripped his off on the wedding
day.
See,
I still don't do that. That's a tradition. I'm like,
fucking ruined my wedding day.
I know. I'm like, don't let it come off. It was so intense when our parents would be like, if this comes off and the wedding's gonna like be broken, it's not gonna happen. And you're a kid and you're like, I'm the reason why this couple's gonna be together forever. I'm gonna protect this red gun knee forever, man.
Dude, I'll destroy your marriage. If mine gets ruined. Yeah.
Meanwhile, you're like,
that gun knee. Okay?
All right. So just for everyone else listening, thank you for joining us. These conversations are door openers. So if you have any feedback, please send your feedback to us. We appreciate it, as well as if you want to continue this conversation. I think it's a good one. We'd love for you to join us. You know where to find us. Thank you to our Newlyweds couple very much. Any last words?
Thanks to our host.
Having us.
Thanks for staying up so late, too. It's probably past your bedtime over there.
It's really late, guys.
Yeah, it is late.
But worth it, right?
Yeah.